Hi, I'm Carl Loveridge from Extra Cheesy Games, and today I'd like to do a small tutorial on how to unwrap a model, how I do it. I think sometimes it's an act of confirmation to see how other people do things, to see if you're doing it the way um, all the ways you can. I personally, when I see other people work, sometimes you just pick something up, you thought, oh, I never thought to try that. So this is going to be a short tutorial, but hopefully it'll be informative and give you at least an idea of how someone that's been doing this for a long time does it. And you know what, if I'm not doing it a better way or a good way and you have better ways, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So let's just dive in here. Now, in my game, Humans Must Eat, I have, at the beginning, you'll be in a lemonade stand, and these are two versions of the lemonade stand. This one is the one you'll start with, which is the low version, the cheap version, and later you can upgrade to this nicer version. And I'm going to be doing all this in Maya, and I'm going to try my best to do this without any special hotkeys, because I have, in my case, I have this UI I wrote for doing a lot of my UV work, but a lot of this is just for my own, just convenience, but I'm not going to use this today. Instead, we're going to just rely on the stock stuff inside of Maya. Okay, so here I've got these two models, and my goal is I want to unwrap these two models together into 0 to 1 space. And so let's begin by doing some basic work. Now, one of the things I like to do as prep is I like to put a grid on my model. So oftentimes I will go out to Photoshop, and I actually have had these grids forever, and I'll make a material that has this texture associated. It's just a grid with some numbers on it, and this is so I could see the pixel density on the model itself. Now, I'm using Maya 2015, and boy, I'll tell you, I've seen Maya 2017. It's like an overhaul, so I'm sorry this isn't more current, but all the same principles apply inside of this. Okay, so one of the first things I want to do before I get too much into this is I want to make sure the model is cleaned up, so I don't unwrap stuff I don't need to. I know for a fact that this game, I will not see the underside of a lot of this content, so I went in and I deleted some of the underside of this. Especially when I get up in here, see there's some faces that have left over. So let me copy these things. Now, one of the tools that you've got to have when you do this is you got to have the ability to expand your selection. So you can do this, and I believe this is under mesh. Where's this at? I've been doing this for so long. It's this grow and shrink region, and that's because oftentimes you just need to get out there and make this selection to grow. Now, in my case, I have assigned this to these functions where it's the greater than and less than arrow, so that I can make these bigger. But what I want to do in this case is I want to grab these two pillars, expand my selection, and I want to isolate my selection. Let me see if I can remember how to do this without my hotkey. Isolate, select, view selected. All right, so what I want to do here is I want to get rid of these faces, like that. And I'm curious why I have these faces here. That might be, you know why, it's because these are together. Let me isolate, select that again. It'll be a new experience doing this without hotkeys. One thing, if you don't use hotkeys in Maya, it makes Maya a lot more difficult to do basic stuff quickly. I would get in the habit. What I've done is I have a hotkey. For example, if I want to pick this whole object, I can just hit that one key and it'll expand out. And I just did that by making a little mouse script that I should post that will grow a selection, and it'll keep growing, growing, growing until finally, when it grows, nothing changes, and then it's done. And it's just a simple little mouse script that does that. Let me verify it on this model as well. I'm going to isolate here. I'm going to grow that out. Check. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now I think I'm ready. I've got my grid texture applied, and over here is my UV window. Okay, so let's combine these things. Mesh combine. So now this is one mesh. And I use the outliner very frequently when I'm doing this because it's simple. Now, one thing you got to be careful with in Maya is this thing, when you do things like combine, it creates history. So I would, if you notice this thing gets creating history and there's these two nodes that were left over here, those are the remnant of what was left behind from the combine. So let's go to modify, edit, delete all history. Okay, you'll notice a lot of that stuff will clean up on its own. Okay, so now let's project. Now one thing that's nice here is you can go up to create UVs, and I automatically unwrap a model. And when that does this, actually I did that wrong. Let's see, did the wrong one. Automatic mapping, and you'll notice there are options in here. I usually leave this on 6. And I project so that there's less distortion. There's other options in here. For this simple model, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that fairly basic. Let me grab that as a selection, and there it is. So now, that is unwrapped 0 to 1 space, and it's relatively clean, but there's some work I'd like to do in here to make this even better. By the way, I'm using a Wacom Tablet to do this. It's a long time ago. If you look through my portfolio, you'll see that 57 Chevy that's in my my web page. I did that with a mouse, and I don't know, must have clicked a million times, and I think I got carpal tunnel or something. So a lot of times in I use my Wacom tablet because it puts less stress on my hand. All right, so let's go ahead and unwrap. Now, a couple of basic tools I use, a lot. When I unwrap and it puts this in 0 to 1 space, I'm going to right-click on here and do UVs, and I'm going to take all these and I'm going to move them out of here. I like to kind of build up this as I go. And one of the tools that you use very frequently is I want to pick on this edge, and I'm going to pick this edge. No, I guess I need to explain this better. You'll notice how there's some of these lines thick and thin, and there's some dashed and so forth. What you've got to do to display this, you go to Polygons, Custom Polygon Display, and you want to turn on texture borders. If you don't have that on, notice how everything looks flat. Now you can't see the seam, so I'm going to turn on texture borders so I can see them. And what that's telling me is where these things are broke up. So for example, if I go down here inside of my UV editor, I can see that this piece and this piece, which are side by side in the model, are actually broke up over here. So this lets me know how to combine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my edges, and I usually do this with hotkeys, so hopefully you are too. And I pick this edge, and I'm going to use this combine and sew button, which is, let's see, is it this one? This move and sew button. This is probably one of the most common things you use when you unwrap. And what that's going to do is it actually combines the mesh and moves it into place. And oftentimes it does it right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my UV tool, and you can expand your selection, go out. I'm going to do that a couple times by hand just to show you, but then I'm going to use my hotkeys. And now I've got a piece that I feel is pretty good. I don't paint with typically my texture on because it sometimes makes it hard to see with that grid. Now I missed this particular spot, so I'm going to sew that piece together, and I'm going to sew this piece together down here. A lot of this is about just paying attention. Another thing is this is a fairly useful function as well. If this thing got reversed, let me reverse this by flipping it. Is this the one that does that? Yeah, this one. Okay. This has a tool that lets you show you if you're doing things reversed. And it's this button up here that is called, what is it called? Toggle UV display. And basically, what this is telling you, it tells you a couple things actually. If you see it blue, it means it's unwrapped properly, it's not reversed. If you see like a lot of overdraw where things get progressively darker, you're going to have things that are on top of each other. So it's a nice way to identify this. But so usually if you unwrap with that automatic unwrapper, everything is already oriented properly. By the way, this is the flip tools. I use these quite a bit to move things around. Another set of tools that are good to be familiar with are these rotators. These rotate in 45-degree increments, and I've used those so much I use a hotkey for doing that. I also have a hotkey for that move and sew. Now you'll notice that this thing is a little bit warped. Sometimes, depending on how difficult it is, I may correct that by hand, but there is a tool in here that's called, I believe it's this one, this unfold tool. It's called, let's see what it says. I got to stop. The smooth UV tool. Basically, what you do is you click on what you want to do, and you can right click and drag, or just left click. Just click your mouse down, and it'll smooth it out. So, for example, if your UVs were kind of whacked a little bit like this, and you ran this tool, it'll clean those up for you, which is handy, especially. That's one thing about unwrapping. You want to do as many things with automation as you can. So once I have a piece I like, I start moving it in place on my 0 to 1 space. And initially, I don't care so much that it fits in there as much as when I'm finished, the goal is to make that all fit together in a nice square. All right, so now let's start taking pieces. Now this is a fairly easy model to unwrap. So I'm going to instead of doing this expand, I'm going to use my hotkeys now that you kind of know what that is. Now, one thing I do like to do is I like to sew things together as much as possible. So for example, this face, these faces here, marry up with those faces. So what I would do is I would pick these edges. Actually, I think you can just pick that whole thing like that as edges, and you use the move and sew button, which is, I have to remember which one these are. It does that. And now I got to clean up the UVs just a little bit. So let's go into this unfold, clean up. Okay. So that's that. Now I notice there's a weird little pucker right here, and I got to see what that is. Let's see what that is. All right. So let's go down the edges. Now here's something I see that happens in Maya. Every so often, I went and right-clicked on my edge tool. I don't know if this is a bug in Maya or what. What's happened is things gotten out of the mode where I'm using the cursor here like this. I don't know what I hit when I do that, but if you suddenly can't select those edges, I just click on the this select button, and it usually corrects it. Now I just hit move and sew, and it popped them together. What half the time happens is I don't have vertices exactly matching up. One thing I would be curious to know about here is, do I have? Yeah, see, there was the glitch. I had an extra piece of geometry in there, which was causing the UVs to get wacky. So you got to kind of watch your stuff, and I oftentimes model with my vertex count information up here, because if I select something and the numbers aren't right, I'm going to undo that until it comes back. If I select that and I see this number isn't right, in this case, this is one of those hidden pieces of geometry that you have a hard time finding, and so until it does something like this, and it reveals itself. In this case, what I want to do is I just want to delete that piece of geometry. This piece of geometry was originally mirrored. That's how come that happened. All right. All right, that looks good enough for what we're doing. Now, let's talk about these other pieces. Depending on the complexity, I may actually, if like these two posts here are actually the same looking piece, I could just as easy do one, fix it, and then duplicate it instead. Well, these are easy enough. I'm just going to click on the edges. Again, go to edge mode. Then you do that. I would get in the habit of using your hotkeys for this kind of stuff because you'll drive yourself crazy oftentimes finding it. Now, I know that most of the time the player will see the game from this direction, so I'm going to use this side as my hiding side. I'm going to do the move and sew here. Move and sew. But it's hard to remember how to do this when you use it with hotkeys all the time. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to pick these three edges, move and sew. Okay. And I'm just going to grab these two. Now, one thing that's nice about Maya 2015 and on is I don't have to change those to UVs to move them around in the UV editor. In older versions, you may have to, if you select those as faces, you'll have to right-click and say switch it to UVs. And it doesn't always do that. And this has been one of those things in Maya that, I don't know, they can add all the features they want, but I wish they'd just make this stuff clean. I'm going to go ahead and just move that. Now, notice one of these pieces is not sewed on properly yet. I want this face here, so let's figure out which one that is. Pick it, and it's this edge here, or that edge there. And there it goes. I did the move and sew again. A very powerful little tool for dealing with that. And let's move these into place. All right, now let's tackle this piece. And here's something to keep in mind as you're doing this. You won't have this problem in this case. Is the reason I use this grid is it helps me see the pixel densities here. Let's just start speeding along here. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to start using my hotkeys now that you kind of understand the basics of how this works. Picking this edge, I can see it based off the thickness, and I'm actually going to pick this edge too because that'll sew in nicely. And so I grew this out, and I'm going to move it over here where I can see it a little easier. Now, what I like to do is unwrap these kind of like a Christmas gift. So obviously a shape that's this complex, I can't just combine it all in one shot. If I do that, I'll get weird things. But notice how this thing's sliced this funny. I'd rather have that be one clean slice. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to pick this edge, and let me see if I can remember if I can do this without my keys, without my hotkeys. I use this little button here. What that does is it causes the UVs to be split in that area. I'm going to do it on this other side. Oftentimes things like this are symmetrical. Let's cut that one as well. The reason that I do that is I want to make sure this is a clean unwrap. So I'm going to take these edges here that it naturally did. I'm going to combine them. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Combine them. All right, now see this thing? It also made a weird cut here. Let's cut this. I'm going to use my cut there like that. I'm going to merge these together. I just do this so that the projection is clean. Let me do one side without it and one with it, and I'll show you the difference, what will happen here. So I'm going to pick this edge. I'm going to use the top surface to make this one continuous unwrap. And let's sew, move and sew. So you see how that cleanly put that together up on here. Let's do the other side and watch what it does. Actually, in this case, it may not matter because they're just going to combine. Yeah, that'll sew together fine. I did extra work for no reason. Let's move and sew. There it is. Let's check this out. Yeah, that won't. That's okay. So now there is the top part unwrapped. Now the back is less critical because you really will not see that. But I'm going to move this one around. I'm going to grow this out and move it over here. Only thing on the back I want to do is I'm just going to combine these pieces together like this. Ding. And let's do this one here. You can do multiple sews at once. And now, see these little scraps? This is a good example of a scrap. Makes this little piece. I'm going to go ahead and combine that here. Just move and sewing. Oh, move and sewing. And let's do the same on it. Usually, like they said, these things happen symmetrically. So let's grow this out where that's going. And in this case, there's some things I don't like about this. I don't like that, you can see that hard edge. I want this bevel to be part of the top surface. So what I want to do is I'm going to cut this out here. Cut. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to cut it. Let's combine this one and this one, this one, and this one. And what that's doing, let's make sure I'm not sewing these together. See, now that just did there, that's a really common thing that happens when you're unwrapping. I got to undo that till I get back to where that was moved. The reason that did that is because the sew was not properly, I didn't have the pieces broken apart well enough. So by cutting these apart properly, that shouldn't sew those to that piece. Yeah, let's try it again. All right, so pay attention to what you're doing over here as you're unwrapping. You don't want to get too far away from an undo situation. Let's combine that again. Okay, that's good. Let's combine this one here. Nice thing when you're doing unwrapping, what I like to do is as much as possible, you want a nice clean projection where you don't want to warp it. If you're going to paint this like in Photoshop, I'm actually going to paint this in Substance Painter. But if you're painting in like Photoshop, it's really difficult to paint stuff that isn't properly oriented. Okay, so now I feel like that's pretty good. There's the back. There's another one of these weird ways this thing. The reason I did that is the automatic projector does it based off angle. I'm going to move and sew those pieces in. And you notice I'm not even really paying attention to what's happening in my UV window. I just know what's going to happen as I'm doing this. I'm going to cut this. The cut tool, combine. Alright, so now when I'm finished here, I should be able to grab this whole chunk. And there's a nice clean chunk. There's a nice clean chunk. And this one's, so basically I think this is, this side of the piece is pretty well unwrapped. Let's grab these two awning pieces here. And I'm going to put those, this is a tricky one to unwrap because of the way this arc is like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say connect this to the side. Now if you watch, see how it did this? I'm going to do the same thing on the other. After you've done this for a long time, you start to know roughly how things will connect together. The only problem with these little ears on here is I get these little tiny scrap areas on my map. Now, that's this one. I don't want this video to be much longer than it is. Let's do this one a little bit differently over here. This is more boxy. But let's take and do the box here. This is an easy one to do. I'm going to take and combine. What I like to do is what you're going to see, I give the best real estate on the map. So I'm going to combine this face. And let's go look at what we're doing here as we do this. So this is this face. And I'm going to take the back side. That's going to go on there. And then these ears I'm going to put over here and over here. Then the underside, I could potentially just, that might be a candidate to get deleted eventually. There's this one. These ones are easy. I'm just going to take and combine, just pick all these edges, hit combine, and I should be able to just move and sew there. That one works pretty good. And same with this one, I'm just going to go through and grab all these. These ones are easy ones to do. A little trickier versions are characters. We'll do a character eventually. All right. Now, on this post, you do see the top, so I'm going to combine this. You watch it, see how that goes on there like that. This other one is right there. That's good. Notice I'm kind of just loosely laying these out as I go here because, frankly, I'm going to clean this up. That's my last stage of all this. Now, for this stage, for these guys, these are all identical. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just say, I highlight these, and I'm just going to delete them. And I'm just going to do one, like so. And again, all I'm doing is that move and sew operation. When this is finished, let's see how this kind of came together. I still have the underside, and you know what? Underside, bye-bye. You're going away. I don't need you. All right. So I'm gonna just take this thing, gonna combine it, and I'm going to go up here to extract. I actually have a hotkey for this because I don't like Maya's default stuff. I'm just going to use this, but basically what this comes down to is you got to go up in here and say, I always get these two confused when I use them in the hand. Let's see, I think it is, is it separate? Hit separate. One of these will break everybody off. That was the one. And I'm going to clean my history up. See that transform? I hate that stuff. So I'm going to go modify, edit, delete all by type history. Clean that up. I just have always been very weary of Maya's history. It gets too extreme, so I keep my eye on it, and oftentimes I'll delete it after just a few. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this thing. Now, in my case, since I'm the art director and everything else, I don't care if these are exactly whatever units apart because I know it's really basic. Now I've got four slats on here. That's good enough. All right, so now what I do with these is I will move them around just so they're not on top of each other. And the last one, okay, so now let's recombine these together. Now I'm going to do this mesh combine. You'll know, I'm always extremely leery of this. It's probably from our Twisted Metal days because our hierarchy was a key part of the way the game got designed. It isn't that way so much anymore, but all right. Now this last one, I'm going to do these boxes. One thing I don't know why, but I personally do not like the isolate tool because when you for stuff like this, because what'll happen is when you isolate, if you combine or separate faces, it'll go out of your selection. I'm just going to separate these. I oftentimes just separate things just so I can see them easier. Now, notice here we've lost our hard edge. That's because when you separated it, that Maya went in and made a brand new element. So I'm going to have to turn this back on so I can see it. Hit apply, and there they are again. That's just what happens in Maya. Now I'm just going to do these with the move and sew, move and sew, move and sew. And this is probably good enough for what I'm doing. So let's just move that around. Perfect. And let's do this other one. So really the way I look at UV unwrapping is it's kind of a just do a piece at a time. I don't care initially how the whole thing comes together yet. All I care about is that the pieces are cleanly unwrapped, because now I think I've got all these pieces unwrapped. Now I've got some scraps here. Let's go see where those are at. All right, let's see what those are. Sometimes to find them, they're a little tricky. They're small. All right, it's these little corners down here. Ah, look. See, so that's sometimes this stuff just falls out. Those are underside pieces I don't care about. Bye-bye. You're gone. Okay. Now, here we are. We've got the final model. Let's go ahead and do the last stage, which is the combine it into the 0 to 1 space. And I always look at this as like playing Tetris, where you're trying your best to pack this stuff together as tightly as possible. And the way I do this is I do a lot of this move or grow up my selection out. And you got to be careful with this that you don't go over your edges. So I'm just going to go ahead and fit these in as tightly as I can. This part, I don't know why, I've always really enjoyed doing the unwrap. Now, one of the tools I like to use here is this rotation tool. I use that a lot to kind of get stuff. And you don't want these to be exactly on top of each other, because if you do, you'll have problems with the layout. In the model, you'll see seams. And these guys, I'm just going to bring them together. Like so. A little tighter. Alright, let's move you guys up. It's probably annoying that that's off screen, I'm sorry. Let's put that there. Unlike some models where you have a lot of little tiny pieces you can fit in here. Oh, look at that, they didn't sew that. You know, I may end up breaking that apart just so this will fit. The main reason you do them all together so it's just nice and clean when you paint. Okay, that works pretty good. These things with the ears, I don't know why they're always such a hassle. What I'm going to do with these guys, just because that is kind of a hassle, I'm going to separate this backside off. I'm using my hotkey to do this, the cutting tool. Cut those off. I'm going to move these pieces off just so these are easier to lay out. So they won't fit that well when they're combined. And that's the back side. That was my choice, was to do the back side. You'll notice I try to avoid scaling. The problem if you start scaling is you'll get a discrepancy in your pixel sizes, which is not desirable. Alright, that fits pretty good. This last one, let's rotate that around. I have a hotkey to do this. That's all that was. I have one that does that. I do that quite frequently. Yeah, let's see if I can put that in there. See how this is? I mean, it's all about fitting the puzzle together. This is all said and done. Kind of get a sense of this as you do this for a long time, where things are going to fit properly. And the last piece will be these two guys, and I'll just move him down like that. All right, let's look at our work and make sure we're good. Now, I do have some dead space in this. I may, decide there's some little features I may end up using. One thing I like to do is I like to kind of pack it up as tight as I can, so that in case I use some of this space for something else, I have already moved it so I don't move stuff around after it's been positioned. It's kind of a pain to move it around once you've painted it. I think that's probably good enough. I'll put this one up here instead. All right. Now, just double check your work that you don't have. And this is why this blue thing is this way, because if you see it, you can obviously see where you got an overlap. I'll do that. I don't like how close this is, so let's move this up. I would rather have it be, I don't like stuff that gets close like that, because that's, you got to remember what size you're, I'm in the UV editor I can get as close as I want, but maybe this is a pixel on my texture, so you got to give yourself some real estate here. And that's it. I'm going to move him over there just because I feel like it. Let's see if I can't do something fancier. Let's rotate that around. Let's see if I can squeeze that in a little tighter. Like that. All right, there it is. It's unwrapped. So save your work. And don't forget to clean up your hierarchy. When you've done a lot of this work, I like to keep this clean as I possibly can. I'm going to rename this to be my stands, and that'll be eventually changed because I'm going to have to break these apart. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed this. UV unwrap is fun, but it is sometimes a little bit of work. This was something simple too, so it wasn't too bad. you have any questions, drop me a line. I'll leave your comments down there. If you like the video and you want to see more, let me know. I love doing these kind of videos. And that is it. Thank you.